Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Tolu, and today I'm going to be talking about 5 period symptoms that no one seems to talk about. Right now, we know that when women see their periods, many of them have some degree of pain or cramps, and then the bleeding as well, which are like the cardinal features of periods. But today I'm going to be talking about 5 other symptoms that women have that people don't really talk about. So guys, if you like what I have to say, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave a comment for me. And if you have a topic that you would like me to discuss sometime in the future, also leave it as a comment, and I'll do my best to get to it as soon as I can. Alright guys, let's get straight to it. So the number 1 symptom on my list is what I will call period poop. One study showed that more than 70% of women say that during their period they experience a change in the way that they poop, in their bowel movements, right? So there are 2 types of changes that women commonly have during their periods. The first is that they notice that their poop becomes softer, or some of them even say that their poop becomes watery and they go to the toilet more often, having something like diarrhea, right? Now, the reason why this happens is quite simple, really. When a woman is experiencing a period, just before a period, her body releases hormones called prostaglandins. Now, what prostaglandins do is that they stimulate the uterus and they help the uterus to shed its lining, right? But one other thing that these prostaglandins may do is that they may also cause stimulation of the intestines. The poop comes, more smoothly and becomes softer as a result of the effect of prostaglandins on the intestine. So that makes many women experience softer stools that may even be more foul smelling than their usual poop, right? But this is just as a result of prostaglandins. Blame it on your hormones. Now, the second type, this is still under the first point. The second type of bowel movement changes is that some women experience constipation. Now, this constipation is also as a result of a hormone, but this time it's not prostaglandins. It's due to a hormone called progesterone. Now, the reason why progesterone will cause constipation is because progesterone causes a thickening of the uterine walls, and this thickening of the uterine walls caused by progesterone usually happens shortly before ovulation, and this thickening of the uterine walls can then lead to constipation in women. So many women who experience constipation will notice that it usually happens just before ovulation. So these are the 2 types of bowel movement changes that women experience during their periods. Now, like with all things, not all women experience changes, right? There is no one cap or one size fits all, but then many, if not most women, will experience bowel changes just before or during their periods. The number 2 symptom that many women experience during their period is bloating. Now, this one is quite common, right? Many women will tell you that during their periods they experience some level of bloating, which causes some degree of discomfort, and I'm sure it will come as a relief to many women to know that this bloating is normal. So because of these changes, the body cells now tend to hold on to more salt and more water, and this is what leads to the bloating that women experience during their periods. So for women who experience this, one thing you can do to help to reduce the symptoms of bloating is, number 1, it's advisable to avoid salty foods or processed foods. I mean, many processed foods have a higher than recommended level of sodium in them. I mean, when we are thinking of processed food like chips, for instance, right, or something like Pringles, for instance, those are the kinds of foods that you should not be eating. You should be eating foods that are rich in potassium. So for instance, your dark leafy veggies like spinach, or maybe something like avocados or bananas, foods that are rich in potassium can help. But it is advisable, as you are eating foods that are rich in potassium, to avoid salty foods and processed foods. And now, number 3 on my list, I'm going to be talking about period clots. So what are clots? Clots are these jelly-like substances that may be seen. Let's say a woman uses a menstrual pad and then she's experiencing her flow and then brings it out. She may see some things like jelly-like and semi-solid. Sometimes they are red, like bright red, sometimes they are darker, but these are known as clots, and most times clots are normal. The bleeding, menstrual blood that we see, it may collect for a bit longer than usual in the uterus before the uterine contraction pushes it out, right? Then starts to become less fluid and it becomes more jelly-like, and that can lead to the formation of clots. Another reason why clots form is sometimes during bleeding, your body may release chemicals like plasma and platelets, especially if your body suspects that this bleeding might be more than usual. That is why I said that it usually happens during heavy periods. Your body releases plasma and platelets, and this can help to reduce blood loss. You understand? It's almost like when you have a cut on your arm. It bleeds for a bit, but then it clots. So that clotting is supposed to stop excess bleeding. That is basically the same mechanism that happens, only that this time it's happening in the uterus, and it can lead to clot formation. So like I said, most clots are normal. But then women should pay particular attention if, number one, the clots that you see are larger than a quarter or larger than a dime. Number two, if they come with really bad pain. Sometimes there may be some pain when you're about to pass the clot and then you feel relief. But if the pain is very bad, or if the clot is larger than a quarter, or if it is associated with abnormally heavy bleeding, like maybe bleeding where you're changing your pads every 1 to 2 hours, then please go see your healthcare provider. Reason being that abnormal clots may be a sign to an underlying physical health problem, like maybe endometriosis, adenomyosis, uterine fibroids, uterine polyps, pregnancy loss, enlarged uterus, bleeding disorders. These are some of the things that can cause abnormal clots. So pay particular attention, but I'm here to say that most times these period clots are normal. And number 4 on my list, I'm here to talk about period cravings. Now, this is when women, just before or during their period, just have this intense desire to eat foods that are rich in sugars, or foods that are rich in carbs, or foods that are even rich in fat, right? And I'm here to tell you that this may also be due to hormonal changes. Now, here is why. Around the time of your period, a hormone which I've mentioned earlier in this video called progesterone increases. Research has come to associate an increase in progesterone with an increase in cravings, an increase in hunger for sugar-rich foods, right? And also another hormonal change that occurs is a drop in serotonin. Now, serotonin is one of the chemicals in your brain called a neurotransmitter. And one thing we have linked serotonin with is that it is a feel-good chemical. So when it is released, you tend to feel good, right? And many women will tell you that during their periods, many of them don't feel good. So what happens is that there is a drop in serotonin around the time of them. Now, one thing that your brain knows is that eating foods that are rich in sugar or carbs can cause an increase in serotonin. So because of this drop in serotonin during your period, your brain wants you to feel better during this time. So your brain then makes you crave foods that are rich in sugar, foods that are rich in carbs. And so when you eat it, you have that spike in serotonin. And you know that women during their period, when they have like a bowl of ice cream, maybe with pizza, they tend to feel better, even if it's just temporarily. And because of that spike in serotonin, they may want more, and then they find that they're craving and eating foods that are rich in sugar and carbs. One thing that women should pay attention to during this time is this. To help with period cravings, it's best to eat at that point in time rather than eating those refined sugary things like ice cream and pizza. You can replace them with complex carbs like whole grains, for instance. Those are like a healthier alternative to eat when you're experiencing period cravings. And then when you feel like having sweets, you can instead have maybe fruits, for instance, sweet fruits like pineapple. Or you may even decide to make a smoothie once you know your period is coming, so that instead of taking sweets, taking healthier alternatives like a fruit smoothie or eating the fruits themselves. Those are things you can use so as to ensure that while you are having your period, you are still eating healthy. And the 5th one I'm going to be discussing today are what you will call anal cramps or anal pain. Now, many women will also tell you that during their period, they may just have this sharp pain around their anal region, and then it just comes like it's tight or like a stab, right? Now, this is due to muscle contraction. What we now need to understand is why this muscle contraction occurs. So remember I mentioned the release of a chemical called prostaglandins much earlier. So what prostaglandin does is that it stimulates the uterine muscles in order to help it to shed the uterine lining. But then prostaglandins may overdo their work, right, and also cause stimulation of the muscles of the bowels and the rectum. And when this happens, because of that stimulation, the prostaglandin can also start causing this contraction of the muscles of the rectum and the bowels, and this contraction is what the women then feel as the anal cramps or the pain, right? So in order to relieve this pain, you can do some of the things that actually help to relieve menstrual cramps in the first place. For instance, having a warm bath is a really good idea during this time. Soaking yourself in a warm bath, the heat can do wonders. You can also use maybe a heating pad or a hot water bottle. You put it around that area to get some relief. Another thing you can do that works for some women, maybe not all, but some, is taking a walk or engaging in gentle physical activity during that time. Another thing which works for many women is to take over-the-counter painkillers. Those can really help, but make sure that the painkiller is something that is good for you in particular, because there are some painkillers that should not be taken by some people. For instance, NSAIDs, you may not want to take NSAIDs if maybe you have a history of peptic ulcer, for instance. You want to take something that is not contraindicated in your particular health status. Alright guys, so those are 5 period symptoms that women have that I feel are not commonly talked about, and those are the reasons why these things occur and some of the things that you can also do if and when you experience them. Alright guys, so if you liked what I had to say, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment for me, let me know how useful you found this, and until next time, take care guys.